Welcome to the South Star Classroom, episode number 179. We are climbing in the ranks. We're about to hit another important benchmark here pretty soon. I am David Castillo, one of the co-hosts of the South Star Classroom, and we are here with the wonderful Jubilee Ransom, as well as the refined and sophisticated Dr. Charles Cole, also in the building. Yeah, oh my.
I'm gonna take that.
Yeah, take it. Yeah. And yeah, we've got a great show planned for you today. Very timely subject. It's a subject that we've talked about, I think a couple of months ago when these things were just starting to happen, but now we have more information and now things are actually happening. So we're gonna dive into it when we get there, but wanted to just open up the opportunity here, as we always do, for some check-ins to see how people are doing. So we will, let's go to Jubilee first. Jubilee, how are things in your world?
Things are wonderful. It feels like it's 70 degrees today. Meadow Rose woke me up at 5 something in the morning because she had to go potty. So I turned that into a 4-mile walk. And 2 deers trolloped, I don't even know if that's a word, but whatever, in front of me as I was returning to my building. So what could be wrong with the day? That was a great start to the day, and I am still relishing in it. So all is well in my world. I'm tired, but I'm happy and I'm grateful. How are you, Doc?
I'm good. I need to get a haircut. I'm looking at myself right now, but I'm good, man. Been trying to work out more. Super sore right now, so that's a good thing. Knocking out. We're at the end of these reports, so it's just always little fine refinements. But once you get out of that monotony, really proud of that work and ready for those reports to come out. So I'm good, man. I'm happy to see y'all.
Happy to see you too.
Right on. Looks like we've got Mr. Yanar is entering the stage. Welcome, Omar.
Omar, I got to get you the tardy box.
oh, yeah, man. I love the tardy box, man. I'm on standard Mexican time, baby. I didn't even realize what time it was. I was knee deep in work. There's a sandstorm outside, and I look up and I was like, man, it's already 5 past. What the hell am I doing?
You can only use the Haboob excuse 2 times in a year.
Yeah, the Haboob, really, man. If you saw what was going on outside, like, you're like, what, sunny San Diego right now? This looks like some apocalyptic shit going on out here. Like,
right, you're inside though.
You're inside.
I got some cannibals outside. Oh man, being inside does not matter when you're talking about spiritualism. When you're talking about just breathing air, man. You look at the air index outside, and it's like 500. It just has like a sad face on it and shit, man.
Omar, we need you to take us outside one day when this is happening, like those reporters that be getting stuck in a hurricane. Not that we want you to get stuck in a hurricane.
I will. Yeah. I'll show it to
you.
Sandstorm.
You don't want to see this?
Remember, David, did you live in Oakland when we had that happen, where it was just red like Mars for like a few days until it rained?
Man, I'll show y'all.
I see the dog is perfect posture, doesn't move.
Let's see. Let's get the camera in the right angle. Let's see.
Meanwhile,
hold on. Let's do this. Yeah.
Meanwhile,
can y'all see this?
Won't leave me be. Okay.
I see it.
I can go outside.
Yeah, that looks sketchy, man.
What's going on? Forget about sketchy, man. You breathe in that air, dude, like you're not feeling good. My mom has severe allergies. She's been inside too all day.
Yeah,
it's not like dust doesn't come inside the house.
We're happy that you're safe. We want you safe.
We want you safe from the sand.
For sure.
Dirty outside, man.
You still could have pushed the button 5 minutes ago. So let's.
I don't need that. I don't need that jibba jabba right now. Listen to me, man. I don't need that jibba jabba. All right, you're coming at me like Rocky.
I'm drinking
come
coffee
out
at 5
swinging
p.m.
like Club of Lang. Club of Lang, baby. I'm good, man. I'm ready to get the show started. Look at the dog, man. The sweet ass dog.
Both dogs. The other dog.
Stay safe, Omar. Stay safe out there.
No, man, I'm gonna go outside just to prove to you all that it's that bad.
We believe you.
Yeah, we
believe
believe
you.
you, man. We believe you. It's okay.
All the points still
Um,
stand.
Things are good here. Yeah, it's a beautiful day. The sun's out. I think we're going to hit about 75 today, and it's sunny. I'm not complaining, not at all.
Whoa.
Yeah, we are embarking on a new home project where we are completely like refinishing and then repainting our kitchen cabinets. So, don't ever try this. This is the one thing that will test your marriage if there was ever a thing. I'll
I've
tell you
heard
that.
that.
Go
I've
try,
heard
go
that.
try
Yeah.
this at home.
I will
These are
say,
Yeah,
Spanish
exactly.
congratulations.
Like
I
we're
don't
gonna
care.
we're gonna save some money, but divorce is on the horizon. So,
I'm not gonna speak that into existence. But David, I
No,
will
no.
say-
Longevity,
I will say,
longevity.
David, you mentioned the
We're
weather,
good.
and Jude mentioned the weather, and Omar. It was 80 degrees Thursday. Then it was 60 degrees the day after, and just started raining. We had snow the day after. It was 30 degrees. Today it just went. It started out hazy at like 55, and now it's like 73 now. I have no idea what Chicago weather is going to be for the rest of this week. So come bring shorts and a parka. Bring it all, baby.
And some Tims. Don't forget the
Right.
Tims.
Right. It's crazy. But what we talking about today, boss?
All right. Well, let's get into it. So today we've got a WWE SmackDown podcast special. We are talking exactly. We're talking about the Doge versus the DOE, right? Not the DOC, but the DOE. So we are we ran a show on this a couple of months ago, I think maybe December-ish, when we heard murmurings that there was going to be a shakeup at the Department of Education. Trump has threatened this before in the past during his last term as president, and we are here, and so we actually now have some information regarding what's actually transpired. Literally, I think in the last week or two. I think in the last 2 weeks. So the Department of Education is the federal government's kind of wing that oversees and monitors and provides funding for specific programs for not just public schools, but also public charter schools across the country. It's the education branch of the government. And so as part of the, the new, what do they call this? The Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, Elon Musk and his
smoke that Doge.
Exactly. Yeah. Elon Musk and his college
unqualified
sophomore
radicals.
Hackers. Yeah.
There's like
they're going through
22-year-olds who have like criminal records.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they've all got these like fake internet names too. You're like, that's Blind Melon, and that's whatever, Baked Alaska. Anyways,
there's one guy with a real interesting name as well, man. Baked Alaska is a good one though.
Yeah, and so not far from the truth, but so there's been talk about dismantling the Department of Education, and it's happened. We're actually seeing that now. And so the title of the show is Doge versus the DOE. And it's very, very interesting too, because then my brain went to like, and of course, Linda McMahon is like running the Department of Education. So there's all of these like
into
common
the ground.
Insane.
Running it into the ground.
None of this is made up. So here's what we know. There are multiple departments within the Department of Education, and the department that we know has taken the biggest hit is the research and statistics part of the group of the Department of Education. It's called the National Center for Education Statistics, right? So they are the data people. They track student achievement. They track what's happening with school funding, and they look at things through an equity lens. Department has essentially been gutted from, I think, 100 people to just 3. So, I'm all for like efficiency, but I don't know how. Either 100 was like way too many people doing the job of 3 people, or now it's 3 people doing the job that maybe 50 people should have been doing. I don't know. We'll find out, I guess. And so the rationale for making the significant cut is problematic on a couple of different levels, and we'll get into it. The office, it's funny, they're slashing one department, but then they create Doge. So they're creating a bureaucracy to deal with the bureaucracy. But they claim these cuts will make the government leaner, more effective. We'll see. But cutting education like research and data and analysis, I don't know. You could maybe make it more efficient, but it's something that I've a phrase that I've used sometimes when I've worked in school systems. Like, if you don't have any data, you're essentially flying blind. You don't know really what's happening with students. And so the NCES is being dismantled. And we don't know what the repercussions will be for states and school districts and LEAs, local education agencies across the country. Like, are we moving away from any kind of like common standards and common measurements? I think it's, interesting to see, will it make the job of holding public schools accountable more difficult? And I think you could also argue that even though there are accountability measures, like, we probably could all agree that there aren't enough for some of our large school systems that are not serving children well. Let's see what else is happening. So why this matters: the dismantling of the National Center for Education Statistics. We don't have a clear picture of how students are doing. And generally, depending on how they're doing, you would allocate resources, right? Identify needs, right? And so if we don't know how students are doing, we don't know what they need. That's gonna potentially be a big problem. It also lowers the bar around accountability. So if we don't have standardized reports, this office also is the office that has been in charge of administering the NAEP exam, one of the 2 NAEP exams, the National Assessment for Educational Progress. So that's a big question mark, like what's going to happen there. We talk a lot about like disaggregation on this show, and what that means is you're not looking at like you have a school and you have like one number that tells you how the school is doing. We actually want to look at what's happening with specific subgroups in your school, in your district, by race, by socioeconomic, special education, non-special education, all of these things, by gender. That's called disaggregation of data. We like to break it up, not just to see how things are doing at the level of the whole, but like go one step deeper, right? And by dismantling this office, that's going to become more problematic. Let's see, what some of the other issues that we might face. Probably see more gaps. We talk about the achievement or the opportunity gap. The wealthy schools, the well-resourced schools, I think they'll probably continue to thrive, and the schools that serve underserved, low-income communities will probably continue to struggle. And we actually saw that in the last round of the NAEP data, right? The gap is actually growing coming out of COVID. And then there's a whole question around like special education too, right? So the Department of Education runs and funds what is it called? What is the federal special education program called? Somebody help me.
You said the what?
The Federal Special Education
IDEA-B.
Program. IDEA, or what is it?
IDEA-B then. So
Yeah.
there's Title One is for low income and at risk, and then IDEA-B is your special education.
Exactly. So these are, you know, these are going to become problematic as well. Like there's no direct plan to say like, okay, now the states are going to take, you know, these things over, and they've just kind of like basically decimated the staff. So that is kind of a quick snapshot of what has happened in the last 2 weeks. It's not isolated to the Department of Education. We've seen what happened with USAID, right? You know, they're going across multiple areas of the federal government. And, you know, again, I'm all for efficiency, but I don't know what the plan is here to continue to provide particular services that the federal government has historically provided. So that's that. I wanted to take a moment there to allow you to digest that, and also to see like what you, or to hear like what have you heard. I know Omar, you've had some things, some implications already at your organization, and also to hear from Charles and Jubilee. Just like, you know, what's your quick take before we go into questions?
My quick take is boo, boo, boo. I'm tired of all of it. I was reading an article in NPR, like, what's it all for? Like, is it really making a difference? And I know people talked about like Project 2025, and, you know, they told us what they were going to do, and they're actually doing it. And I also remember Donald the Trump saying that he didn't have a plan, but he had a concept. And so a plan is being enacted, but it still seems like just a concept, because I'm not understanding like where they're really trying to go with this long term. And I know somebody wrote it or typed it somewhere, but also like, did you really count the cost? You know, you're trying to save money, and there's so many casualties, you know, happening as a result of that, which I think at the end of the day is going to swing back around and still cost you just on the other side. And so that's my initial thought. Like, what are you doing? Like, what is the long-term plan? Is it worth all of these Americans being harmed at the result of, you know, these decisions, which I think are just haphazardly being done.
Oh,
and IDEA, that was sped. People put it in the comments.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And hi, mommy.
I mean, I want to go in a different direction. Maybe our audience is like with us on this one. Global aid, so foreign aid, dude, is 1% of the federal budget. I just want to kind of start riddling out some quick statistics so that our audience understands. I know we're talking about education, but I want to create a comparison here. So that's $71.9 billion. Say 72 billion. Okay. Just for context, education is about 4% of the federal budget. That's 268 billion. Sounds like a lot. Defense is $820 billion. So, I mean, I am no mathematician, but from the math, how much can you divide 820 billion by 72 billion by? And that gives you a perspective of where Doge is going. So you're picking on foreign aid and you're picking on education, but you're not picking on defense. And here's the problem. Defense, I think, is where you have some of the greatest levels of corruption, of misspending. And look, there's misspending everywhere. I'm not going to nullify the fact that there's some dumb spending everywhere. I will say that the media is doing a very good job of mischaracterizing some of this spending. Because let's be honest here, they're like, government's inefficient, they're spending money incorrectly. Look, you're always going to find issues with that, and you're going to find even greater issues in the private sector of extraordinary corruption. So let's not even get into government versus private here. But you start breaking it down, if you're going after these like tiny little birds of education and global aid and not going after defense, that is already a suspicion to me. because defense is the one place that I think you should start. Why? Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security combined is about 53% of the budget, people. I mean, which is unbelievable because I would say that the United States has terrible healthcare. Terrible. Like if you don't have insurance, you're screwed. Medicare and Medicaid are wonderful utensils that should be, in my opinion, nationalized for everybody. But then if you're really looking to like create government efficiency, are you going to go after the main three, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid? That worries me. So I just think my hot take is you started with USAID and are causing a biological disaster, because guess who helps with containing Ebola all over the world? The World Health Organization, global aid. Yeah, man. Yeah. You remember that one thing that hit us back in 2020 that came from Wuhan? Yeah, man, that came from outside of the United States. So I think that Elon Musk is a charlatan. I think that Doge is bullshit. And I'm really pissed off that they're going after things that don't make any sense, because I know what they're doing. And it's not a mischaracterization to say that it's incompetence. It is purposeful. They are going after the very things, the very people that are making a difference to create catastrophe in order to land themselves a fat little plutocracy where they go in and say, look, now we're the saviors. Google's going to come save you, and Elon Musk's going to come save you. And like Elon Musk, you couldn't save shit. So
don't we have like a measles, or don't you have a measles outbreak in Texas somewhere?
Massive measles outbreak in Texas. That's correct. Measles.
Yeah. I guess my question is, because I want to make sure, like, I'm not trying to be difficult. Do you just want my opinion about what's happening? Am I trying to tell people, prepare people for how they should be dealing with what's happening so they can protect themselves? The only reason I'm asking, because I feel like I've been talking about the DOE every day of my life for the last month and a half, and I'm tired of it, but I want to be helpful, right? Because I think if I just give my opinion, I'm gonna just be repeating stuff that I've said in previous shows. So I just want to, like, or is it like, yo, actually, let's educate folks? So my opinion is what everybody else's. I don't think this is executed well. I think the concept of what Doge is supposed to be actually is a novel concept, to get like a lot of pork and waste out of government, because there is a lot, so we can actually help people that we need to help. The other part of it, though, is that, as Jubilee said, the man said what he wanted to do. He ran on getting rid of the Department of Education. There are going to be court challenges to that will probably lose. So what do? Well, you strangle it to death, right? It's very simple. McMahon was hired to do what McMahon is doing, right? Like, that's why he hired her. So, and just for people out there that may not know those things, another thing is, I remember I studied this in school. I remember being a kid when it happened. People hated No Child Left Behind. Like, they hated it. It's all kind of case studies of how terrible it is. And now we have reports from the same side of people that are saying, well, we need this disaggregation. Well, disaggregation, as David Castillo will remind you, came specifically in 2001 from No Child Left Behind. That's where it came from. Like, that is where it was invented, right? Like, it's still a relatively newer concept that we're using, even though disaggregation started in the 70s with the Civil Rights Act, and you need to start tracking if there was a change in the racial or gender makeup of these jobs, right? So some of that stuff is going away. So I guess what's the I want to know what's going to be the helpful conversation, because me telling you how much I don't like it, I don't know how much that helps you at home. What might help you, though, is if you got a special needs kid, you was already kind of getting fucked before, and now you it's setting you up to be fucked even more. Excuse my language. So if that's the case, what should you be doing right now? What should you be thinking about? This is the time where I'm going to tell my people, like I always tell them, this is the time for you to be agentic. And we have to get past this part of shock and surprise of this thing that is going to continue, and it's going to get worse, and it's going to get more drastic. So now you have to shift into, what are you actually going to do? And so that I want to make sure I'm participating in the right way, but I just need you to propel me in the direction we gonna go. And that's the way I'll tell you that combo. And David, just real quick, people, thank y'all for being here. Please hit the like button. It really helps us get visibility. It helps us with getting things shared. If you're in here, thank you, Georgia, Chad, Kiana.
That's my mommy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And mommy, can you please hit the like
Alonzo,
button?
man.
Thank you.
I want to see why I can't get home.
Tell mama I said thank you after she hits that like button. Back to you, David.
All right. Yeah. Well, let's get into it. So, and obviously, you know, I think as you've all mentioned, this is like part of a much larger effort, and it's also, you know, the Department of Education compared to, like Omar said, other areas of federal spending is pretty insignificant, I would say. However, that's what we're talking about, right? So we're talking about the potential impacts for, you know, dismantling or trying to make the Department of Education more efficient. Their first move has been to, you know, slash the National Center for Education and Statistics. So given that, let's get more specific. So if we stop tracking student progress nationally, and Charles did, you know, talk about No Child Left Behind, which I think was like federal law for 10 years, maybe. I'm not sure how long it was around for. I think it was a 10-year project.
There's
and then we didn't have
Education Act, and then different presidents may name it something different. So
Georgia's
was No Child Left Behind, but there's been an elementary and secondary act for however long. That's for like decades.
And No Child Left Behind definitely was the most, I think, at least during our lifetimes, the act or federal legislation that had the most kind of like accountability measures built in. Like, you know, if your students didn't perform on particular assessments, like your school went on a list that was like published everywhere, right? You had a number ranking. It was called the Academic Performance Index from 0 to 1,000, right? And so, like, where are you going to be? Like, we had schools in the 400s and the 500s. There was there was a formula that went into it, but essentially, like, pick a number between 0 and 1,000, right? And schools got ranked and listed, right? We don't have that anymore. And so, even under the you know, post-Bush kind of shift to Common Core, we didn't have anything for many years, and now we have Common Core, and it's just all kind of like, you know, it's a little convoluted right now. But the question is, like, if we stop tracking performance nationally, how are we going to know which schools need assistance? How are we going to know, you know, how to like provide resources to students that actually, you know, need help, right? And I'll say this too. Yeah, I don't know if like slashing the DOE is going to have any impact, but we've had the Department of Education for, I don't know how many decades it's been around for. And we could all probably argue that, I don't know, student achievement is even with like a quote unquote bloated bureaucratic DOE, we haven't seen the gains that we would expect to see. Right. And so if you take away the ability to like look at data nationally, state by state, district by district, what's going to guide our thinking to, like, you know, and help us to understand who needs support and where students are struggling.
So that's making me think too, like, if something's ineffective, right? If it's not killing everything else around it, then repurpose it. Don't slash it. Because I'm thinking, I was watching the hearings with how you say her last name? I always mess it up. McMahon. McMahon. I was gonna screw that. I might just keep saying it wrong just because. No, I'm kidding. But one of the I don't know, maybe she was a congresswoman. So, but they in the hearing.
She ran twice unsuccessfully for the Senate in Connecticut. She is Vince McMahon's wife, billionaire of the WWE, World Wrestling Entertainment.
Gotcha. No, not her. The woman I'm referring to. But yes, thank you for that. And then the dude who was also a wrestler was like sitting right behind her. Very distracting. But anyway,
Triple Hotch.
One of the, I guess, was a congresswoman, a senator, somebody who was in the hearing, amidst all the yells and screams because people were getting hauled out. because people were getting hauled out, was saying you're not understanding like the purpose of the Department of Education. And so from the lens of a parent who has a student with disabilities, right, a student that is on the autism spectrum or something like that, maybe it wasn't the most effective, right? But these laws and stipulations were put in place to protect, like, the most vulnerable, especially in a country and a world where if you had a child who was nonverbal, autistic, you don't know what the heck was happening to them at school during the school day, because there weren't any things in place to say, hey, no, you can't hit this child or put them in a room by themselves and just keep on saying day by day that you can't teach them. No, you got to figure out, you got to assemble a committee, get the school psychologist on board. You got to do a behavior intervention plan. You got to give them a IEP, a 504, whatever it is, to ensure that student's needs, that child's needs are met. And so that person was speaking about the protections that come under IDEA. And so, all right, there may have been parts of the DOE that are ineffective. We haven't seen as much growth as we have wanted to as a country in reading, in math, right? Our competition is they slap us down every time. We know this. So repurpose it. But that you only do that if you have the core of that in mind, that you want to improve education in the country and for all children, for all students. And I just don't think that was top of mind, right? If saving money was top of mind, so you just slash it, versus no, let's actually get a non-biased team to come in here, look at it, evaluate it, see what's working. All right, this is cool. We have evidence that this is impactful. This is helping children. Well, this is wasteful. This is not. Let's slash this. No, you X the whole thing out. Doesn't make any sense.
But I think so. Again, I agree. I want to just say, like, I agree. I also want people to leave here smarter, right? Like, I want, and what I mean by that is, like, if I ask people just randomly, when was the Department of Education like created, right? Because what the arguments I've been saying is, well, what we do without the Department of Education? How do we operate? How are these people protected? The department is fairly new, right? It was formed in like 1980 by a very unpopular president, Jimmy Carter, and Reagan immediately tried to get rid of it, like kind of killed the powers and things like that, right? The original Department of Education was in the 1890s or something like that, when it was a non-cabinet position, and they were charged with doing these things. They just weren't a cabinet position per se. This was formed in the 80s because they did the civil rights studies and looked at a few different things. And then they said, listen, we need a more direct, efficient way so like we can coordinate resources, so we can coordinate these things. And people did not like it, right? Because it felt like it gave non-elected parts more power than what they deserve. So again, I think that some of the questions of it is like, well, people, they're going to have answers for all our questions, is what I'm saying. They're going to say, well, that's going to go back to a department where it was before. Like the way, like the department, in my entire life, there's been DOE. And in my entire life, at every school I've been to, they have never been doing really well by kids with special needs. Now, I don't think that you just slash and cut. I think that you can find ways for it to be better. You can hold them accountable. You can push those things. But I don't think that you take a little protection away and have no protection. So Jubilee, I 1000% agree with you. I'm just trying to also just play this third man role of like, I just want my people, when they go to the water cooler, to know what they talking about on this thing, right? Because, they trying to get rid of a lot of different departments that they feel add to bloat and add to, blight of government, right? So that's it. I'm just going to be fact checker today, because again, we all feel the same, and I don't think that makes for good shows. I don't think.
So answer me this, and so one of the purposes they say that's connected to all these cuts is giving the education back to the states, right?
Yeah.
Do you think
it's not even to the states? They're saying giving it back to parents.
Yeah. But the states is their main argument. But yes, with parents as the face, but yeah, state control. Go ahead, Ju. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. I just think that's weird, and it's like, well, where's the evidence that the states can do it better? Like, what is the standard? Like, what are our core values around this?
They would say you have more than enough evidence to show that the feds don't do it well either. So what they'll do is you'll point to the best states and you will use them and lift them as the litmus. I'm just telling you.
Yeah, but if the state, if the demographics are not the same, if the SES is not the same, then you're comparing apples to oranges. All I'm saying is slow this down. Like
But
you
they're
didn't have
not.
you didn't have enough information, to do it. And I get it, right? But like there are other variables that play a part in this level of like decision making. So you give it back to the state. So you try to give it back to the parents. Some of the parents don't want it. They like, we were hoping y'all had the answer. So, all right,
Yeah.
that's my little rant.
And I mean, no, I mean, I think it's a very good point because there's I don't know what you call it, but there is this thing where it's like, okay, well, let's put parents in charge of making educational decisions for their children and their families, right? Sounds good. This is all happening at the same time that several states are running these, these new school choice bills and just handing over money for parents to not just pay for private education, but also pay for tutoring, pay for supplies, whatever it is that they want to do, with very little accountability. And so the question is, if you're talking about government run like district education, like, is it okay for, and we experienced this in Oakland too, Charles, we're kind of veering off, but that's fine. Like if parents want to send their children to whatever, call it Cesar Chavez Academy in Oakland, California, and they love the school, they love the teachers, they love the community, but like 5% of the kids are proficient in math and 10% are proficient in English language arts.
Right.
Like, does parent
Which is
demand
true now?
it is, I know it is true
now.
but does parent demand like trump like any kind of accountability or any kind of like evidence that anything is happening at this school that's positive for kids? And it's easy to say, and then people say like, oh, well, now you're trying to say that parents can't make the best choice for their child, and then you become like the enemy, right? You're like anti-parent rights. That's the argument that people are throwing around today, and that's my concern with the dismantling of the DOE. They're not just pushing it to the states; they're literally pushing it to the individual level of the parent, in many states. And I think in many cases, I mean, you can like your school, but like, is Cesar Chavez Academy in Oakland, California, like educating its kids? You can pretty much clearly see that it's not. And so that's where government needs to step in and say, like, Houston, we have a problem.
Yeah, I'll go in at the O. I think O has something to say.
Yeah.
No, I mean, my quick comment is that if you're going to, I don't like the hypocrisy of all this. And what I mean by that is that in a country where you are guaranteed liberties, right? True liberty, which means that whatever you're doing doesn't harm anybody else. So big difference between words, and liberty needs to be well understood. Ben Franklin, I think, and Madison did the best job of defining it. That means that, like, yeah, dude, those parents can choose that school. And there shouldn't be any enforcement about what is going on there, despite the fact that their academics are horrible. If they feel that this is their choice, they have the liberty to make that choice. What I find to be very interesting is that this is coming into a place where that liberty is then going to turn into destruction. And where I see this going is that if we can deregulate this situation, so much so that there is no visible separation between church and state. And I sent you guys the article because that's going to go straight to the Supreme Court very soon. And it may be the topic of our show that I host. I see Doge and Linda McMahon essentially saying, we're going to get rid of this department, but we're going to get rid of this department to essentially, one, defund special ed. And if the states want to do it, it's up to you, but we ain't going to take care of it. Defund low-income students, which is Title I, and be like, we don't care about these kids. We're going to have you guys figure this out, and ultimately promote what I think is a white Christian nationalist ideology. Let's get church, let's get Jesus into this school. And the thing is that that's not liberty. I don't want to go to a school that's public that has Jesus in it. If that's my local school and I'm forced to go to that school and I'm forced to listen to Jesus, that is a violation of my liberty, straight up. That is not okay. Now,
and that's a slippery slope. Yep.
It's a massive slippery slope. But I want us to understand this. If you are SPED and you are Title I and you are entitled to a free and equitable education, and equitable being the appropriate words constitutionally for education, and those things are not well funded, does that then become equitable at all? It does not. So I think that's where I vacillate. I'm with you on the white Jesus thing. I don't want white Jesus either. Bring me black Jesus any day. Bring me black dynamite instead, to be perfectly honest with you, man.
Leave Korean Jesus alone.
Yeah.
What movie is that from?
Jesus in every color. Jesus in every color. All right.
Leave Korean Jesus alone. 22 Jump Street people, in case you don't get the reference.
Man, that's a good ass joke. And that's where I like really vacillate in terms of what would I think the founding fathers really want, which is something that I've studied immensely. And if we're talking about a free and equitable education for all that Ben Franklin was a massive proponent on, in order to ensure that you had an educated populace that could perform civic duties and understand civic duties, like, you're doing some pretty unconstitutional shit right now. But I say that the liberty of parents choosing a school that may not be doing as academically well, I would land and say, like, okay, that's cool. Just don't bring white Jesus into that.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a clear, separation of church and state. I really believe that. And I say that as a full Christian over here, not the best one, but definitely a real one. I would say this because I want people to leave smarter, because my opinion is going to bleed into you all. So I'll go with the educating piece. I would say this. I'm a black man, so state rights and federal rights mean something to me. And let me tell you what I mean by that. There are a lot of instances where it does make sense for there to be more state control than federal control, because the states understand what is happening. They have different needs, and that's what they're focused on. However, there are circumstances where there's a minority group of people, i.e. black people, who have always vacillated between 12 and 14% of the population. We have not grown. Latino has grown and continues to grow. Black has been projected to stay level, if not drop, right? So in that instance, when states wins that's how you have half the country that has slaves and half that does not. And then the United States says, hey, this is not the nation we want to be anymore. We need X to happen. So feds are going to supersede what the states say, and we're going to make sure that slavery ends. And it led to a civil war. All right. So again, you also see this now in feds and states. Let's look at legalization of marijuana or sports gambling. You see that it is still, both of these things are still illegal on a federal level. All right. Weed is still illegal on a federal level. However, they have decriminalized and said, we're going to leave that choice to state rights. Now, remember, President Obama was the one who did do raids on weed spots. I live in Oakland. Oaksterdam got raided, right? That was the feds superseding. So you have instances where it makes sense for the states. In this instance, what I'm hearing you all saying, and what I want listeners to hear, is that this is a case where we have a very minoritized, unprotected group. And even though that the safety measures we have in place now are not really that good, getting rid of it leaves these people even more vulnerable, and we don't have faith and trust that the states will pick up that ball and carry it forward. All right. So I just wanted to just make sure, because there are legal and logical arguments for things that should be state things. Listen, if California and Colorado say we need more revenue, weed is something people like, and we can tax the shit out of it, and that's what we want to do. And Colorado has been a glowing example of this thing. And I also think that sports betting is but I think sports betting is going to go the opposite direction. I think we are going to see sports betting become the new crack for people. I see people betting on sitcoms, right? Like, it's going to be a huge thing, right? And who knows what will happen. So, again, my actual feelings and my actual reactions are not different than that of Jubilee's, David's, or Omar's. I'm just going to play this role of like, when y'all are talking about this at the water cooler, I don't want you to say, well, we've never not had a Department of Education. No, you have. It's a relatively new thing. I don't want you to say, well, we've always been gathering this data in disaggregated ways. No, you haven't. That started in 2001. Now, those things are important and we need to maintain them. And because every state's going to have different standards, and we're going to have an even bigger mess than what we have now. And what the strategy is going to be is there will be, because there always is how numbers work. There will be 2 and 3 states that exceed, that kill it. They will become the pet projects. They will get so much assistance in telling that story, and you won't see the disparity between that state and other states that are failing. So that's the end of my comment. But I just
this is good. Yeah, this is good, and this is leading to. So I want to just backtrack a little bit because this is great. We're kind of like freestyling. This is great. I do have one more question for you all, but before we do that, I want to backtrack a little bit to do some timeline work, because the Department of Education was created in 1979, right? Mm-hmm. The modern day version under Jimmy Carter. We know that what came out during the Reagan administration, which was commissioned by his administration, was a study called a report called A Nation at Risk, 1983, right? So Department of Education exists. Reagan gets elected, tries to, do what Charles said, and like made efforts, or at least rhetoric, around dismantling the Department of Education. This report comes out, which highlighted a huge issue in our national academic performance test score landscape. Mm-hmm. A lot of disaggregated data in this report. And then what does Reagan do? Then he uses the Department of Education to, the heavy hand of the DOE, to start laying the groundwork and the framework for what would later become, the Bush legacy of No Child Left Behind. A heavier hand from the federal government, DOE, in education, more data-driven policymaking, and the start of what we saw in terms of federal education reforms, right? So Reagan kind of did this thing. This report comes out, and then he kind of rethinks his position because he was a pragmatic leader, right? So I thought that was interesting just to run that timeline through. But the question I have for you all, given everything that we've talked about, is thinking about if we lose the ability to, again, going back to the data, if we lose our ability to actually look at what's happening nationally with our students academically, and they do other things too. I mean, the Department of Education also does I've worked in school systems. I've supported school systems. Omar can probably talk about it. There's this thing called disproportionality. And so the federal government does go out and looks at districts and LEAs to say oh, Charles.
Tell them what an LEA is. Tell the people what
a local education agency. So Charles runs a school, a network of schools, or whatever it is. And we recognize that, of the students that are in your special education program, half of them are Latinos, but only 10% of your student population is Latino. That's a disproportionality. That's something that the actual Department of Education monitors and tracks and holds districts and LEAs accountable for. And so we'll lose part of that. And then the other piece is just losing the, the academic data. So if we lose these things, the question is who loses and who wins?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, again, I think there's going to be a myriad of both. And I know that I can't get in. Listen, man, this gang war shit right now, this is so super politicized of left, right type stuff. And I also don't want to just be a full hypocrite myself, because I've always had beef and smoke for the DOE. Not that it should be gone, but that it should be better and actually serviceable and serve people and do something instead of just, being responsible for dismantling the Black educator in this country. That's what happened when desegregation happened. And that was before the DOE. So, that is when that happened. I don't ever, from my position in life and who I am, I don't trust or ever believe that the government is going to just build things that's going to flat out help me or serve me in that way. And whether it's a Democrat or a Republican doing it. So I'm looking at this in a similar way. I do think that we are smarter. We have more information. We have more technology. And I just did a post about this. We can tell our feelings online, but what's the actual plan? Like, we can be mad and know the internet and do internet good, but what's the ideas that people are going to be able to fall back on? And this is a time where all the people that say, I'm not my ancestors, you'll catch these hands. Well, here's your moment. What are you going to do? Because I know what Omar is going to do. He's going to keep teaching and building a great school and making sure kids are educated. I know what David's going to do. David has been fighting against the system since day one, and it's going to be like, okay, this is how you look out for your kid. Here's that more information. I know what Jubilee is going to do. She's going to always see the best in people and push to have a better society and things like that. What I'm telling you is that if you have a child in this system or you have a community that you care about, you need to figure out for you how you're going to be a part of making this thing better or in those things. And it just, because we can't keep complaining about this guy doing the shit that he said he was going to do. And I hear the labor union organizing joint. Here's the thing. I love unions and I believe in unions. The union I least trust the most is the teachers union. And now here's how much I love unions though. If you build a Black teachers union right now, I will give you all the money in my wallet. I will be a monthly subscriber and I will donate monthly. Because that union was built to keep Black people out of jobs, to take those jobs away from those people and protect those white teachers that have been there. That's why when you had desegregation and all that stuff and getting these kids into schools, we didn't make teachers move to make it be more equitable. We moved students across cities. We bused students to places because they believe white ice was colder. So again, we got to really wrestle with these concepts and these talks. I don't rock with Trump. I don't rock with this administration. I get the idea, Doge. I think this is poorly executed. And it's not going to be enough to just complain with our lattes and shit like that. What's going to be different? Because a lot of us that's watching this with these complaints can do things and make changes or got the money to put your kids in private school. We didn't activate plans when we've been failing kids for the last 30 years. So I don't know if I expect more from us as a populace now. Sorry.
Hey man, what are you apologizing for, man? That's good.
No, that was, I mean, yeah, you're kind of getting us to the point. Yeah.
I just wanted to do something.
I think just a couple notes and then we got to, go ahead, Jubilee.
It's community. Like, we need community. Like, some of these things we're crumbling, inside in terms of, sometimes teachers don't think parents care. Parents think teachers don't care. And I mean, it's time for us to rely on one another. As a parent, I mean, thank God my kids know how to read, right? So I'm thinking about college and career pathways and trades and all these kinds of things and ways that they can get a skill set that's not reliant on them going to college, even though I do plan on them going to college and I hope they plan on going too. But that's what I'm thinking. Like, how do we, bolster up their skill sets? And then for those parents that have younger children, it's like we literally have to learn how to teach our kids. And that's not something that you necessarily sign up for, but it's something I think that we need to be we need to learn to do, and then we need to know also like the questions to ask of those that are educating our students. Because honestly, the way that this is all playing out, it's giving desegregation. That's what it's giving. Like, build your own, teach your own, support your own. Like, that's what it's giving, because and it existed, right? Because nobody was doing for us, and so we ended up building infrastructures and institutions that served us. And I think more now than ever, we still need that, and we need to be having these community conversations. To Charles's point, about being agentic, like, we need our community more than ever. We always have, but I think we got to a place where we became comfortable and thought that we were like in a good place, like, because we're a melting pot. we're a melting pot, and it's like, no, the federal laws and things that were implemented forced people's hands to treat us equally, but people's hearts just never changed around it, and so here we are again.
I mean, my quick take: who loses? SPED. You're a SPED student. You're going to lose, man. Title I. So if you're low income, at risk, you're going to lose, man. If you are in a state that has just definitively low income, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Mississippi, Louisiana, I'm looking at you four. You are going to lose.
Yeah.
Because that is federal money that needs to go to those states. It's also federal protections for those students. Because like Oklahoma, 100% isn't going to give a shit about any of these kids. They're going to straight up Christianize every school, straight up go hardcore right, straight up just dismantle any kind of system of protection for Title I students. Title IX, just forget about all that, which is, protection for the equity of gender. And forget about your SPED. So I think you lose big time. Just a couple hot takes. Alonzo, do you mean Jesus or did you grow up with Jesus? Because we grew up with a lot of Jesuses. Reagan was a thriving racist and a piece of shit of a human being. So I just want to make sure that that is loud and clear on this show, that if we're going to sit here and talk about Ronald Reagan and this like bullshit aura of how this man was the great negotiator, he was a humongous racist. And his intent.
We have recordings of him.
Right.
Dude, absolutely saying the N-word. They talking with Andrew Carter's chief of staff to say, we can't say segregation anymore. We're going to change that to states' rights. Like, the record on Reagan has been awful. So let's not use that as any kind of example of what we should be doing ever in this country. And like Reagan, I think is very much hip to what's going on in like Louisiana.
When I mentioned him just now, I just was giving the history. But.
Yeah, no, I'm straight
you
up
pissed Omar off.
any props from Reagan whatsoever.
He's triggered now. He's triggered now.
Anyone in like the history of the United States. Just to be like,
I grew up in a crack era, bro. I'm not a Ronald Reagan fan at all.
So yeah, I'm going to rip off of him. Completely.
Every episode we have something that triggers Omar. A few episodes ago was
now we know.
Nobody about Reagan in front of me without me going nuts.
We need to do a clip. That's Omar being triggered. We need it. Kid Rock, Reagan. I can find others where he's just railing.
I gotta calm down on the Kid Rock thing, man. That's still simmering. I'm like, man, this guy needs to. What is it? STFU? I'm like, go away, Kid Rock. Go play some music and shut the fuck up. No one gives a shit about your political ideologies, man. You ain't even educated. Get the fuck out of here.
Listen, but this the thing, though, right? Is it gonna be a shut up and dribble, or do we want to hear from everybody, right? Listen, here's the thing, man. I just, when we look at this, bro, like, it's just funny, man. I think that in our country, Bill Clinton made some. I'm a poli-sci dude, so is Omar. So we do get a little pumped for these. Like I'm actually a Bill Clinton fan. I think Bill Clinton was actually a really good president. And I think, but one of the things that I think that we're seeing now is he made the conscious decision to ship manufacturing jobs to say, America will not be the manufacturing capital. We got China for that. We're going to be the brain economy. We're going to invest in college. We're going to invest in smart people. We're going to invest in these things. And then that's the beginning of like our globalization that to really kind of take off. That's when you start seeing Detroit hot to a screech, Cleveland hot to a screech, all these Midwest kind of like Rust Belt kind of flyover states that had economies where if you didn't go to college, you still could go work in one of these factories and somewhat still support and have a family. And now all these things, it's a perfect storm of this moment where you have this huge, like, people that's rich are up here and people are poor way, way down here, man. And it's, we got to pay attention to this type of stuff. I just thought the irony that I did mention, and I will say, is the one about Bush, because I've gone my entire adult and child life where people never gave that man any credit. And I'm not a George Bush fan either. I'm really not. I'm not a fan of none of these people, but you gotta look at facts. He got so much shit for No Child Left Behind. And here we are, every liberal, every leftist, every Democrat I know is now talking about we still need to
Yeah.
keep this disaggregated data. And they will call us hypocrites. And so all I'm saying is it's never been set up for us. This is a bad situation, but I'm a part of a group that sees bad situation after bad situation. So again, I ask you the same way I asked last year, the same way I asked 10 years ago, what are we going to do for us? What does that look like? And these people in that house, and I love that we call Trump racist, and that's fine. I don't care. I think every single president has been racist. I think so. So, I mean,
Jimmy Carter?
Maybe not Carter. I mean, I don't know. Let me not be hyperbolic, right? I think people all have their biases. The point that I'm making is I come from a people that has never trusted government. They just never have. They've always been suspicious of government. So now to be like, the government is not having my back, it just sounds wild to me. It's like they ain't never fucked with us, and they about to fuck us over some more. So now, but if this is the thing that's gonna, if this is our moment that brings us together, then damn it, let's be together. And what are we building together? That's all I want to know.
Let's
Okay,
stay
so we are.
That was my final thought. My bad.
Yeah, we're at time. I think if you all have something quick you want to get off your chest, let's do that. But I want to add this one little quick thing here. The reason this subject is important to me, and I think specifically around the dismantling of this department within the DOE, is I ran a school system under No Child Left Behind. Like, I understood the federal and as they kind of translated to the state, like, accountability measures under No Child Left Behind, and we used that to and we leveraged it to create a school where students were thriving. And if you remember, under No Child Left Behind, you made the biggest gains at your school in terms of your score for lifting up students from the lowest performing kind of ranks, right? So students from far below basic to below basic got you a lot more points than moving students from basic to advanced. Mm-hmm. So that's where we focused, right? That's the mindset. We're going to help our students that are furthest from opportunity in our particular school. That's what we have control over. I also ran a school system when there was no accountability, when we were going from No Child Left Behind to Common Core and whatever that's become. And we were flying blind, but we didn't fly blind because we brought in we were constantly tracking data internally, had nothing to do with the state or the federal government was doing. I'm also a parent. And when we chose a high school for our son who has an IEP, we had the benefit of being able to go and look at data from the dashboard, from the state's dashboard to federal data, from eddata.com. You know what we looked at? We looked at suspension rates for Latino special education boys to see which school had a larger percentage. And we looked at two schools, and one of them was like kind of in line with the demographic, and one of them was like way above. I'm like, this school is suspending special education Latino boys at alarming rates. And you don't get to actually see that unless you have access to the data. We obviously did not choose that school, right? And so that's my biggest concern, is like, as a school leader, a systems leader, as a parent, like, how are we going to, like, what information are we going to have access to going forward unless there's some kind of a plan B to make decisions for our children, other than like, oh, we like the school, right?
Right.
That's my takeaway.
Any other final thoughts, people?
You just might have a problem. I understand. We all need somebody to lean on. We need
Smalls, what are you doing? Why are you so mad? I gotta yell this megaphone at you, Smalls. It's a disparaging statement every time I look at you, Smalls.
All right, y'all. Well, thank you for joining us today in this raucous conversation.
Thank you, Mahalia Jackson, in the bottom right corner. We appreciate you.
That was
Yeah.
beautiful.
Great.
And we will see you next week for the South Star Classroom. We're going to be up to episode
Brother.
180 next week. So
Woo!
there we
Same
go.
bad
Thanks for
time,
joining us,
same bad
everybody.
station. Peace out, everybody.